Welcome to Two Truths, where we explore controversial topics in religion, philosophy, and history from at least two different perspectives. I'm Dr. Darren Yamarino, and today I'm going to be talking about 10 commandments for a successful religion. So, I've mentioned before that my background is in comparative religious studies and philosophy of religion, so I feel like I might be uniquely qualified to sort of get into this particular topic. And, cult documentaries on Netflix are super popular, right? They always seem to do well. But what about a larger scale religion even? Not a smaller community that you might find in some of these cult groups. What might be required in any century, really, but especially now in the 21st century, to start up a successful religion? Now, got my list of 10 here. Some of them might seem kind of obvious. Others are going to be very weird. That stuff I guarantee you never would think about. So number one does make good sense. I don't think anyone would disagree with number one. Promise community. Any good group, even a small scale cult, a lot of people are attracted to it because people get lonely, right? And depressed. And so if I can quickly join a group that provides me with friends, meaning and values, purpose, I might be willing to overlook, right, some pretty wild beliefs and practices, right? That's what sort of the stuff we've all seen in these various cult exposés and documentaries. Now, really what's underlying a lot of this too is that once you're in the community, there's this confirmation bias. You're in an echo chamber. I mean, not that the internet in general, with the way certain algorithms work, that it's that much different, but the confirmation bias will maintain a sort of status quo once you're in there. And I'm not saying that's a good thing, because I don't really believe it is. So this is a list of ways in which I think you could create a successful religion. Not, though, suggesting that I believe all of this list leads to you being a more, a better person or something like that. I just think it's kind of like elements that are needed or would work. All right, so I'm sort of just trying to give a unbiased take on it. So number one was promise community. Number two, strong focus on the afterlife. I mean, this is, kind of tale as old as time. A lot of the religions do this already, right? So they're going to focus on the fact that maybe you have an immortal soul, and that soul will last into eternity. It will be brought back into a sort of immaterial body of light, or maybe it will be reincarnated, right? From more of a Buddhist perspective or Hindu perspective. So stressing an afterlife is found in the majority, I would say, of successful religions. And if we want to give reasons for why, just like on the last one I talked about confirmation bias, I think here there's another situation that we know about where people are loss averse at a 2-to-1 sort of ratio compared to gaining things like potential gain. So if you already have something, you are not going to want to give that up, right? Especially if that thing is life, right? Life itself. if you find a religion that tells you that, hey, believe this, practice this, and there's no losses, right? Only gains. That's what you want, right? You want to be able to offer that to a group of people. Right? So that's the second one, a strong focus on the afterlife. Now, third, this is one where I think you have a possible distinction too between some smaller scale cults and larger religions. This one seems counterintuitive. Do not stress enlightenment. See, now you might think that's the opposite, right? Especially in like new age type cults or things that are coming out of more of a Indian philosophy, Hindu philosophy, yoga, right? You might think that like enlightenment is what you're aiming at. And it is, perhaps. Okay? But the reason why I don't think you should stress that is because this is a mistake that I think atheists make and followers of various religions make. People aren't really concerned always about something being true, right? They want it to be interesting. That's more important than it being true. And they want it to foster hope in them. Right? So people are willing to overlook a lot of things if they can get something interesting or something that will give them hope or build up pre-existing hopes they already have, like strengthen them, right? So enlightenment, though, it has typically a tough journey that involves breaking yourself out of repeatedly the sort of patterns of thought that you find yourself in. That's not very like comfortable, right? It's difficult. It can be alienating to those you love around you, stuff like that. So I don't think that it's a good idea to place heavy stress if you want like a large scale thing that's going to last on the enlightenment. I mean, it also, stressing enlightenment could encourage individual thinkers, just like mystics are always sort of like, yeah, they might be saints, some of them say, in a Catholic tradition, but they say things that are problematic, like heretical at times. And you really don't want people like going so far off script. And if you're stressing enlightenment, that could happen. I do think, though, related to number 3 here still, don't stress enlightenment, but do claim to have hidden arcane knowledge, but that it's like maybe only for sort of the elite or for the few. I do think that it's critical that people believe, at least, that the founders of this religious tradition have tapped into something that is real, foundationally real, and possibly novel, right? From if people are seeking like to convert some new religion or something like that. So it's this weird kind of paradox of like, I don't think you really want to stress the enlightenment piece, whatever that word even means, right? It's going to mean totally different things depending on various traditions. But you do want to claim that like, yeah, we have something that you can only get here. So it's a balancing act, I think, between those things. All right, number 4. This one's weird too. 3 gods or less. How many religions can you think of that focus on 4 or 7 or 8 or 14 gods and goddesses or whatever? It's not, if you can think of any, it's going to be a very short list. I mean, sure, there's obviously polytheistic religions that are going to have thousands, hundreds of thousands. And I think that's okay. So to be clear, on number 4, it's 3 gods or less. or an ill-defined large quantity, like 100 or 1,000 or something like that. Because our minds seem to be structured in this manner where this works with even like just numbers in general and counting. There seems to be something about being hardwired to understand the concept of oneness, two-ness, three-ness. But then beyond that, in like counting numbers beyond that, it's something more difficult that needs to be learned. And it becomes harder and harder to remember, right? If you've got 14 different gods, exactly what each one's doing, when, and how you worship that god or goddess, and all that. So ask yourself this, though. How many religions have 3 gods, or a focus on 3 components of ultimate reality or something like that? The answer is a ton. More than you probably think. Confucianism, for example, even has like heaven, humanity, earth, and you could call that a trinity, right? A Confucian sort of trinity. Buddhists have this Trikaya, like 3-body doctrine that's pretty foundational, really important. Within Hinduism, you have often 3 primary gods or goddesses talked about, right? So Trinity being the main one, right? So you've got Father, Son, Holy Spirit, or even more of a Gnostic sounding one of like Father, Mother, Son, and the relationship between these 3 is complex and maybe difficult to understand. But again, there's something about this whole maybe almost Hegelian structure of like thesis, antithesis, synthesis, or something like that. Or maybe just the simple fact of like father, right? A father, mother, child viewpoint. So have a religion with 3 gods or less. One's good, 2, that's easy to comprehend. But you see, there's advantages to having multiple gods, right? So for example, it's like if I have 2 gods, a dualistic, a bitheistic or ditheistic situation, maybe in Zoroastrianism or Wicca or something like this. If I place, or Manichaeism maybe is a good example, if I place evil on one of the gods, I can exonerate the other god completely, right? So that there's a god of goodness, of light, of creation, and then there's a god of darkness and destruction. And that's a much simpler model than something like there is only one God. And now you have to try and exonerate this one God from culpability, from all these problems that come up in sort of what's known as like theodicy, or trying to justify the works of God when you have a monotheistic situation. So what I'm getting at, I don't want to totally go down a rabbit hole on this one, is that 3 gods or less, right? That's what you want because it's easier for people to understand. Or you could have thousands where people are allowed to just come up and make up new ones, or regional ones like you have in polytheism. Because people can understand that there's just like a ton or something that are ill-defined. And they can understand 1, 2, or 3, but they're not going to do well with 14 or something. It just doesn't seem to work. Okay? Moving on. Point 5. Do not outlaw marriage. Right? Not most religions don't want to do that, unless they may be like in a Gnostic sense or something. I don't know. Perhaps if they hate the earth and don't believe that we should be being fruitful and multiplying like you find in Genesis, if they think that's a negative thing, you might be against marriage. But it's important. People want to get married. A lot of Christians aren't aware that, like in 1 Corinthians and stuff, sure, you've got this whole like love is patient, love is kind thing that people love to read at their weddings. But turn a few pages earlier in Corinthians, and Paul's making it clear that if you have to get married because you lack discipline and control, then fine. But it's not like a good thing per se. It's a tolerated thing, right? Now it might become a sacrament though, see, later in the Catholic Church, but like a lot of people don't realize that. Notice that like the Bible itself might almost be seeming to go one way. It's not like Jesus was even married, right? But then when the religion develops, in no way are they outlawing marriage. In fact, they're sanctifying it all of a sudden. Because on a practical level, if you sanctify something like marriage, now you're going to have a confirmation bias thing too, right? You and your wife. And hopefully you can help reinforce your beliefs. And you're going to have kids. And who better to indoctrinate, right, the next round of believers than two parents who have that level of day-to-day influence and control. I mean, something could be said here too for plural marriage, maybe, that you might find either maybe in Islam or in Mormonism or something, earlier days at least of Mormonism, right? I don't know. I mean, I think that there's more potential cons than pros on that one, because of just the struggle of dealing with that many people. But regardless of what your take is on something like that, with the plural marriage piece, it does seem like people want to get married, and that should be part of your religion. All right, 6. Do not impose strict dietary laws. People don't always want to be strict vegans. So Jainism or something in India, that's hard. It's impressive. It's admirable, and not many people can do it, right? Even vegetarian or something, it's difficult. So, look, Judaism has fairly strict dietary laws. Jesus seems to shift that by suggesting that it's not really what goes in your mouth that's defiling you, but what you're coming out of your mouth, what you're saying, that will defile you, right? So the strict dietary laws thing is a challenge for growth, is what I'm saying. Large-scale growth of a religion is very difficult. Aside from Islam, and there's very different like historical reasons as to why, right, Islam spread as fast and wide as it did. But if it were to like start today from scratch with the situation on the dietary law, it's going to be hard to keep that peace, I think, at least, and grow to a scale of 1 billion plus people. Maybe, but I just think that it would be a challenge. It would be easier to not have strict dietary laws. All right, number 7. Do not enforce asceticism. This is related to number 6, but it's more than just food now, right? Let's be real. 21st century, a lot of people aren't religious anymore. Why? It's boring. It's boring, right? For a lot, most people just don't want to do it, right? They don't want to go to church and be told what to do by a priest or a rabbi or whatever, mom or anyone else. They want to have some pleasures in life. So I would say like on a scale of 1 to 10, where 1 is hardcore asceticism, right? Starvation, deprivation of like sleep, of even like shelter or anything like that. Like stuff you might find in the Shramanas, like Strivers in India in the 6th, 5th century BCE. That level of hardcore asceticism, you're not getting a ton of followers on something like that. So on a scale of 1 to 10, I would probably suggest something like a 5 to a 7 at least. Because if you go all the way on the other end, what are we really doing here? If you're on like a 10, which is, let's say, total hedonism, it's hard to incorporate that well with certain other elements of a religion in terms of maybe like values and mission and whatnot, that the religion might have on a larger scale. So I think somewhere in that like 5 to 7 range is more reasonable, especially for the 21st century. That's why I'm pushing even like 5, maybe closer to 7, where you're allowing people more liberties than a lot of religions of the past maybe have had. All right, 8, engage celebrity endorsements. We've seen the success here with Scientology as a more recent example, but this would go for many other religions, right? I mean, Christianity in general has got plenty of its celebrity endorsers, whether it's in the music industry or acting or whatever else, right? So, or sports. So you need celebrity endorsements now in the 21st century way more than you might have in the past, because celebrity is divinity. Sadly, but it is, right? Simple example, top people on Instagram or TikTok or whatever, they've got in the 400 million range, right, of subscribers or followers. Well, that's how many Buddhists there are. You know what I mean? Let that sink in. People got that in 5 years, 10 years. Buddhism has been around for 2,500 years. So if that doesn't show you the level of power and influence, and that kind of will lead us to our next one. Number 9, use cutting edge technology. This one is key for the 21st century more than almost anything else. You need to find a way to incorporate AI, VR, and social media platforms, mainly like, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, stuff like that. Part of the reason though why I think you need this, it's not just to like scale and, reach anywhere on the globe and all of that. I think that you need to use this cutting edge tech because any new religion that could gain traction in the 21st century, we stand at the precipice of something that never has happened in our history, especially for religion. Think about all these cults. The charismatic cult leader, which you need, dies. Now, if there's not a number 2, say someone who's strong enough, confident enough, or narcissistic maybe, I don't know, enough. Think of like a David Miscavige coming in Scientology. If someone can't like step in, the thing could collapse. And it does collapse normally, right? Now, 21st century, things are different. You have a new religion that starts up. The founder never needs to go away, right? Because we have like grief technologies, sometimes is what this is called, where you can like keep, your deceased grandparent or father or mother or whatever alive in a digital avatar type sense. But you combine these digital avatars with the fact that almost all these religious founders, they write and record tons of stuff, right? Again, think of Scientology. If they had, like if L. Ron Hubbard was around with what you've got now with like social media and how many recordings and stuff there'd be of him. There already are a lot, but there'd be way, way more, right? All that is fed into the latest and greatest AI model, like sort of whatever AI model that we have in the coming, AGI situation. And effectively, people want to believe anyhow, right? So it's like they're dead, but are they fully? You know what I mean? Are they really gone? If they're able to have communication and they sound like the same person because we trained this AI on tons of data, right? That is this like founder of this religion. It blurs the lines big time between life and death and human and God. So that's why number 9, cutting edge tech's critical, not just to reach more people and followers, of course, all that stuff, but primarily it allows for this like digital immortality, and what you can do with that is very unique. Right? Now that takes us to 10, our last one, right? You can't have a religion in any century if you can't fundraise. That's the harsh truth, right? So if you can't raise enough money, there's no scalable. You can't, just like a business, right? I mean, it's very similar to a business. We can tap into Scientology again and point out that L. Ron Hubbard's well aware of that fact. And if you want to have a successful religion, one of the best ways to do that is not pay taxes, or pay less, at least, right? Taxes. So you want to attempt to acquire full religious status and protections that come with that. In the United States, especially, is great what you can get. Right? So that's important. Fundraise and attain protected status. Now, here's my take on just general fundraising. I bet everyone's heard or familiar with a tithing model. Now that could be 10% if it's Judaism or Christianity, or 2.5% if we're talking about Islam, or any other number. I think that 5 to 7% tithe is probably good, because times are tough for one thing, and it's not that easy for people with inflation and other things, right, to be tithing 10% or more. 5 to 7% shows a good level of commitment, but beyond just the standard tithe, I think in a lot of, unfortunately, like evangelical, non-denominational, right, Christian churches and stuff are doing this, where they want it all, basically. Your whole estate, in your trust, that your will, that you should give everything over to the church. Now, what's scary is that there's full on scriptural support for something like that in Christianity, but for very different reasons than what a lot of these people are totally misusing those funds today. So I think like 5 to 7%, that's the way to probably do it. You could still grow. You can bypass a lot of the unethical, sort of misappropriation type things that might come along with it. But 5 to 7%, including your entire estate at your death, like that would be enough if you were popular in other ways to really scale and grow. So there you have it. 10 sort of commandments for a successful religion. By no means am I saying that this is all that there is, but these do seem to be important elements that aren't discussed, as frequently. Right? I make clear that like there's a lot of others, right? Like I mentioned a charismatic leader, right? Something like that. But those things are pretty well known and discussed. I was trying to get into elements that people probably wouldn't think about, that you nevertheless would need. So let me know your thoughts. As always, open to criticism or critique. So feel free to drop a comment, and please subscribe and like this video.